Varsity or Everest would be doing anything with the tower, we could work with them to do things that would mitigate that too. One of the things that we talked about was, we've talked about it extensively with the town hall building project, would be to relocate where that gate is. And so by changing the way the trucks come in and out, you could, change a little bit of the sight lines, right? Because we could bump out some, some foliage and things on the side of the driveway to make it a little bit of a
Right,
curve.
like right now, we have a straight shot into the yard, like
And
you're
so-
talking
so
about,
the
and now it
tr-
would be
the
a little bit of
trees-
a curve.
So one of the things people keep getting hung up on is the height of the tower, but for the most part, most people driving by or walking down the street, your view line is, between here and then at an angle going up. If you screen that with trees that are planted to grow at the level of where your eyes would be looking,
Right.
you won't see or notice the tower as much. You'd have to be looking for
Right,
it
so it'd
really
be
to see it.
kind of smaller trees, larger as you go back to get that sight line.
Further you get away from the street, the larger the tree would be, the
Right.
closer to the street, the smaller the tree could be. So, the things we can do in that kind of foliage plan to try to make sure that we lock it as much as possible.
Right. And I will say that the Historic District Commission really, as much as it was a courtesy visit and Chris didn't need to be there, the board really was thankful that Chris came, even though they didn't quite agree with everything that he was saying, but they really appreciated him being kind of a face in the room and able for people to kind of talk to him and discuss the project. And the neighbors had a chance to kind of vent their frustrations with it. So I think it was cathartic for everyone involved there to at least be able to know that their voices were heard. And I think Chris took some things home with him to help change some things with it. So
Good.
I think it was a productive meeting.
Good. All right, thanks, Sean. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Sean, for going.
Okay, policy for Board of Selectmen appointments to boards and committees, first reading.
So in your packet, you have this. I'm sorry for the lateness of it coming today. I did draft it and then sent it to town council to have it reviewed before I presented it to you. So unfortunately, it came over the weekend, and I didn't have it to give to you prior to today. Came back to me over the weekend. I don't know how you want to, this is a little bit of a long policy. Did you want to have a formal actual reading of it? Do you want to review it and make comments, and then I can make changes and fix it before the next meeting?
We can go through a little bit now, but,
Right.
I mean, I'll start talking while you're reading, but anyways, I mean, we can talk about it next week too, but I said 2 changes,
Okay,
2 notes,
yep.
my opinion, but I thought it was pretty good in terms of how you laid out the expiration of term, whatever the reason was, right? Whether the term expired, or whether they left, or whether they resigned. On the second page under applications, you had review. In terms of sort of the things to promote this happening quickly. So you say following the expiration of the 30-day notice period, and I was gonna add, and no longer than 60 days. So sort of giving sort of 0 to 2 months to sort of get the process done. I think that we need to get these committees need to be geared up and ready to go. And we have a lot of work to do in this town, so I don't want to just leave it open-ended. So whether it's 60, 90, 120, but I think there needs to be there needs to be a sort of a
I
time
think it's good to
frame.
put a little sunset on it.
Yeah, so we can talk about what that means, but I'd like to have some sort of, if you guys had a chance to read it, some sort of,
Well, my only concern about that is, we had for instance, the Board of Health opening was on your agenda and announced
For a long time.
at meetings every 2 weeks for over 6 months. So if you sunset it, and we don't have anybody apply, there's no real,
Oh,
that's
true.
Even maybe say no
If an
longer than 60
application-
days unless no applicants
that's not
have
applicants, yeah.
applied
Yeah,
or
you
something
can
like
just say if or unless. So we can talk about that. Once again, so that's something I just think we should have talk about. I don't know if 60 is a magic number. It could be 90, it could be 120, but it needs to be something. Because these committees need to be up and running and doing their things. And then the other one was under the board and committee recommendations, as before the matter of appointment comes before the Board of Selectmen, the chair shall consult with the chair of any board or committee with a vacancy concerning potential. I think the Board of Selectmen should hear from I think the chair should come or communicate. So I think it should be the
Good.
VOS, not just the chair. and
That
yeah.
was my comment as
Yeah.
well. And I just, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No, go ahead.
interrupt.
No,
Okay.
join in.
So I agree. Sitting at this table, there's a lot of agreement going on. So I just wrote a little statement, the chair of the committee shall forward that board's recommendation to the BOS. The BOS shall not be bound by such recommendation, but shall consider it a substantial factor.
Yep, fine with that. Yep.
Can you forward that to me, and then I'll, do you
I
mind?
can-
Yeah,
sure, I
yeah,
can
yeah,
give you
yeah. Okay,
this.
that's fine.
So-
Yeah, like that. I thought the board should be involved instead of just the chairs.
Okay.
And that was one of my changes, so you stole it.
Yes,
May I
Duke.
make a suggestion that you put something, Duke Seaver from Essex Street?
Yep.
To unappoint, you need to put something in there to unappoint if they don't attend. You're appointed, and you never go to meetings or anything like that. You have to have a way to get rid of them.
To
I
be
agree.
removed.
That's
That's-
that's almost a
that's-
different policy, but that's, I agree.
I think it's a different policy.
Yeah, it's a different policy, but
But you are
Duke
right,
raises a
that's a
great point. I think
concern.
it should be a different policy, but I think we should have
I
one
think
because
so,
we
too.
do have a handful of this situation that's happened over the years.
and once
that
again,
I've
we're
been
trying to get committees to do stuff and they can't do stuff, people
And
don't
it's
show
tough
up.
when you can't get a
Right.
quorum.
Thanks,
when you-
Duke. I didn't have enough work this week, so I appreciate that
Yeah,
suggestion.
yeah. Good.
I make a motion to have Joe create a policy for removing members of boards who do not attend the board meetings.
Second. We're jumping the gun. here a
Just
little bit.
to-
We're
just
sidetracking
for,
the motion here.
There was no
which is fair.
motion on this.
For the future.
Yeah,
Haven't made a
there's
motion
no
on
need
this
a
yet.
motion. This is the first reading. You'll do a second reading at your next meeting
Yeah.
and vote it then.
Yeah.
I don't know why you can't incorporate it right in this policy. I don't think you need a separate.
Well.
I think, we're talking about, appointments. I kind of hear what you're saying, Duke, but I think they're two separate things.
But part of this.
It's kind of like talking about the divorce on the wedding day.
Right, right. No, I
Do
think
you know
I
what?
think that's a good point. Does that
Like,
make
hey,
sense?
come join the committee, and by the way, if you don't show up at enough meetings, we're gonna kick you off too. I
Right.
mean, it's,
But I think, midterm vacancies, which is, shall be.
Right, but that's more
for
resignations or someone is,
non-compliance.
right.
Right, so that it might be, just a thought.
I'll
Created.
I'll change it however you want me to do
Right,
it, but I mean.
for midterm vacancies created by non-association or non-compliance, whatever term.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to
this.
specify it, though, because, I mean, if we have, the separate policy for unappointing or releasing a member of a board because of non-participation
Okay,
or whatever,
yeah.
I think that's a midterm vacancy, no matter how it happens,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So,
All right,
Yeah, I think this policy is administrative. I think that policy has a little bit more
a little more politicized.
little size and
Right.
opinion to it, so I think.
well, if
we
somebody
keep 'em
doesn't
separate.
show up, that's subjective.
No, but it's, what,
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
I agree with
no.
you, but it's a little more.
Okay.
There's always excuses and,
Right.
there's always a story and there's always, right?
Right,
The cat had to go to the
Yeah.
vet, right.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Anna Seizik, 227 Highland. I just have a clarifying question about Part 1A, just to make sure I understand correctly. So there's a 30-day sort of advance notice, and then I'm looking at the line, it said, "The Board of Selectmen shall, at the two regularly scheduled meetings held immediately prior to the expiration of terms." So the usual cycle of BOS meetings is every 2 weeks, right? So I'm just doing the math, like that would actually only be like a 14-day potential period. I just want to understand, is that sort of like the warning bell going off? You have a 30-day public notice, and then at the prior two meetings, so let's say hypothetically that first of the two regularly scheduled meetings was today, 2 weeks from today would be the second regularly scheduled meeting. That's only 14 days in between. I just want to make sure the dates actually add up on the calendar. Can someone clarify what is meant by that?
So every 30 days, we have 2 meetings. So what we're saying is during that 30-day period, we'll announce it at both of those meetings,
So the two regularly scheduled meetings
or during that 30-day
are
process.
during the period,
Yes.
not after the period?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we're sort of saying, hey, 30 days and, we're supposed to
So
make a
let's
public
say
announcement.
the
and-
notice, so let's use a 30-day month,
Okay.
for example. So
Yeah.
let's say the initial notice of vacancy happened on September 1st.
Right,
Then, as you approach, let's say there was a meeting of the BOS on September 7th, you would say, hey, it's on September 30th,
Mm-hmm.
this is going to expire. At the next meeting, 2 weeks later, you'd say, we really mean it, it's going to
Yeah.
expire on
Right.
the 30th, please, that sort of sequence. And then once you get to 30 days after the initial notice,
right.
that would be the conclusion of that
yeah.
initial 30-day
Yeah.
period?
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
how I understand it to be.
So
That's
it's
how I
it's
understood it.
subsumed within, not outside of.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is that a good
Yeah, right.
assumption?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So are we going to, for review, so applications, so we're announcing it 30 days prior to the expiration? And then we have 30 or however long we want to review the applications, right?
Yeah, no less than 30 days after the expires. You almost have 60 days, right? You almost have from September 1st to like November 1st for an
Yeah.
October 1st. And then
Yeah.
it goes beyond that till a sunset clause we set, whatever we agree to, unless there's no applicants, and then we sort of have
Right.
to leave it open-ended.
Yeah, okay.
Do we have, I mean, I know we don't have any data on it, but amongst the senior folks of the board and Joe, as far as appointments, like I'm thinking FinCom, we had an opening for a while. Board of
You wound
Health
up
was a
having two
long time.
openings quickly.
We've had a handful of openings for different things that have been
Right.
stretching that 60-day calendar, maybe even 90 days. Is there an average or an under-over on it? You know, to your point of what's that
Right.
reasonable window?
Usually 1 to 3 months is what I've sort of.
And I think it depends on both the committee and the amount of work and number of meetings they have,
Right.
and how active the chairs are in trying to find, because a lot of times what has happened is that when a vacancy comes up, the chair is working to try and find somebody to help fill the vacancy, make a recommendation. They'll tell somebody, oh, go by the Board of Selectmen, the town manager's office, to fill out an application, we get it on the agenda. It's been very kind of quick, because we don't want to, the board in the past has not wanted to lose people who are applying, so they just moved quickly, usually with very little process. That's why
Right.
you wanted to do this. That, I love it, I think it's a great idea, and I'm glad we're doing it. But I think the difference in length and time is more to do with what the different boards and committees are doing, and how active the boards and
Right, yeah, I
committees
think
are
that's
in trying to
accurate.
find members to serve with them.
But I would argue by being more structured and people knowing what the situation is, it will make it easier process moving forward.
Right.
It won't
Right,
be
and
as,
it'll be clear, I have to find
Yes,
somebody
I have
within this time.
and I have to respond within
And I have to
some-
respond.
Right.
So what about a 60-day period? Do people feel comfortable with that?
I think,
So you
that's what I said, I said 30 to 60,
Yeah.
but it could be 30 to 90, 30 to 100.
Right.
I'm fine with 30 to 60, but if someone says I want it to be 30 to 90, I wouldn't probably have an issue with it either, so.
Could we say at the end of 90 days? I mean, or,
I would say, I would go the former, the 60, and then put in something to the effect on, I don't know how to word it, but if we don't have any applicants, then that period's extended. Just keep it open.
Extends 30 days until after.
Until applicant,
Until, yeah.
yeah.
right.
Or 30 days after the first application is received.
Right, that
you
would
know-
seem more fair.
Yeah, I
Right.
do, I do think 30 days might be a bit soon.
No, what we're just
No,
saying
we're-
is that, oh, I see what you're saying, but we've got, I mean,
once you've
but
had
if
one
we have,
applicant,
if we
you
have
don't
two,
wanna just
if we have
run
two
it out to
applicants
90 or
within
120
50 days,
days,
and they're
That's
both
a
good
long time to
applicants,
wait.
sorry.
Wait.
So I agree with you that it might be too quick, but if you
Yeah.
have two applicants within 15 days, then you're allowed to, after 30 days, say, you know what? We've got two applicants, we're gonna vote between them.
Right.
But if you don't have applicants, you don't have to rush, you can say, okay, we're gonna
Right.
we're
Well,
gonna
what
give
if-
it to 90 days.
We don't want to make
Right.
anybody wait
Yeah.
No, that's
120
that's
days
true.
if there's
No.
multiple
Right.
applicants or
I think
something like that.
120 days is too much, I agree. But I'm thinking, people are so busy, they don't have time to think about it. What if we made it 60 days? That's kind of in the middle.
I'm kind of giving that, I'm saying 30 to 60 is sort of the compromise.
Yeah.
I think these committees need to do work, and I think that by
Right.
not
Right.
putting people in these positions, we lose a lot of time and productivity.
Right.
Sometimes a deadline is a great motivator, too. If you
That's
tell
what I'm saying, the
people-
more
That's what
organized
we
we
were just
are.
saying,
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
But I still
like,
think 30
I got plenty of
is-
time to get to that, and then they go, oh, my God, I've only got a week left.
Right. So that's why I think 30 is really too short.
But it is more like 60, because keep in mind, we're giving the 30-day pre-notice, the 30-day post-notice, so you're getting the 60 days of thinking about it, and then you're getting another 30 days after that, so you're almost getting,
You're
90
getting
days.
90, really.
yeah. And if you had more, you're just getting more, like
Yeah,
getting
what
three,
do you mean 90? Where am I missing this?
because you're getting 30 days before the position's open.
You're getting
30
notice that the
days
position's
after
coming
the
up.
position's open, and then you get another 30 days of no more than 60 days, is what I'm saying. So you have between minus 30 and plus 60, which is
Right.
90 days.
Okay,
90 days.
I don't see this, the third 30 days. I see.
No,
more
that's what I asked to
We're
add.
proposing
And
it.
no longer than 60 days.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking to add.
So when on
Right,
part
right.
two
No,
applications,
I agree with
Yeah.
you. So I agree, 60 is, sounds like a comfortable number to me.
I think what's kind of confusing, because I just realized I was thinking, when you clarified saying it's a negative 30 days,
Right.
because that's notice
Right.
before they
Right.
leave.
Right.
So that 30 days, we still have
If we
someone
get notice
occupying
before
that
they leave. I
committee
mean,
seat.
sometimes people just leave
Yeah,
committees.
yeah,
but
that's true too. But
if we get
give
notice.
that
Right.
gives us the 30
Right.
days, and then,
Right.
you know, the 30, and then the no more than 60. So that's, when you look at the negative 30 to 60, that's 90.
90 day, right.
Right, and
Like
we'll
you
have,
were saying.
we'll have a lot of these come up when we look at our yearly appointments and stuff like
Yeah.
that in June and whatnot.
Right.
We'll have all those people on those boards who are up for reappointment. We'll post all those, and then they'll have to say, well, I'm still interested in it, and then they're one of the applicants. Is that how we're gonna work it?
Yeah, I would think for rolling over new, reappointments, I think that you could, they've already been appointed and they've
Right.
been doing the work. I don't think you need to go through as much
Right.
process.
Right.
Right now, that would, without a policy to remove people, that's really your only opportunity to remove somebody you think isn't
Right.
performing. So I would not necessarily change that. This is for openings.
Right.
So either the person has left or their term is expired and they've expressed that they don't want to come back.
Right, right.
So,
Gotcha.
So,
Mr. Chair?
Anna, yeah.
So my next question was related to that. So if it's 30 days pre-notice, then you're essentially saying you'd want 60 days of consideration. So meaning people have 30 days prior to apply, and then you're saying the Board of Selectmen would have a 60-day review period? Is that the language that you're sort of talking
But
about?
it doesn't say that. I mean,
What
it's
what
not
it says
clear
right now
to
is it says
me.
30 days notice.
Yeah.
30 days review, and then you can present, but it doesn't say, but it doesn't have an end on it. It just, the way this is written, it says, after 30 days, I can now come to you with my first application,
Right.
or my first two, or my first three. But also, I can wait forever. So what I'm
Right,
saying
no,
is,
I-
that-
I-
is-
that's-
what I'm
that would
saying
be
is
my
that,
concern
is
is
that I
if
think
you-
30 days is the right amount of time to wait for people to apply.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't need to be 30 days, it could be longer than that, but it needs to be, there needs to be a clause at the end, so my recommendation was 60
And the
days.
applications would start
Right.
after, if I'm reading
it might start after the first announcement, but you make the first announcement and you don't really start the clock for the 30
Until-
days until
right.
after the second announcement.
Right.
Right, so then if you go back to the clock idea, so if you have 30 days and then sort of the period during which people can start applying, and then at some point that closes, right? So if you get viable candidates within that period, then your clock is somewhat set. So if I'm understanding right, you're talking about language would say, if you have viable candidates, you can't forever continue to extend it just
Right.
because you may not like those
Right.
candidates or there's something
Correct.
deficient.
Right.
Like there's some way to end the vetting process. So if you have receipt of a viable candidate, that essentially starts the official clock. And then that
60
gives the
days.
board 2 months to
Still,
consider.
this is not
Correct.
Which,
clear.
in my opinion, having watched the boards, I mean, I think 2 months seems like a long consideration period, especially if you consider the 90 days. That's a quarter of
That's
the
four- I mean,
year.
it's 4 meetings, so.
Yeah.
You know, that's a long time to go. My other question, though, was about sort of tenure. Has there ever been discussion about, and maybe this is for the eviction policy more so, but having reappointment limits? I mean, is there a limit if someone has served, I don't know, for 30 years and they haven't ever done, and maybe they show up at every meeting? Has there ever been a consideration of a turnover
People we wanna
clause?
keep.
In my experience in
That's
municipal
the people we
government,
keep.
getting people
No.
to
Yeah.
join and stay
Yeah.
is the
Yes,
challenge,
that's
not,
not a
yeah.
We're
problem.
promoting, yeah,
When you,
promoting volunteers.
I understand what you're, especially with an organization our size, right? You know, we've got somewhere between 60 and 70 permanent employees. And then you have, largely, a lot of the work is done by volunteer boards and committees. And a lot of the historical knowledge that is in the organization is in those boards and committees. So I, for one, would not necessarily be in favor of evicting people who have
Right.
30 years' experience, because they might be the only good resource we have for what's gone on. So we want to actually value that and make sure that we protect that. People who come and work on the committees and are showing up at the meetings and doing the work should be encouraged to stay as long as they want. I think we'd only be looking at a removal policy for people who were not performing.
Right, so the clause would only be
And
for.
thus taking away a position from somebody who would perform.
Right, okay. So that policy, sort of I guess my question comes down to, if you're evaluating people based on qualifications and experience and tenure, in that consideration, would there be some notion that just showing up shouldn't be enough, right? I mean, because anybody could show up. I think you'd have to have some measure of active participation or performance or.
I anticipate another meeting like this about a removal policy in my future, but, yeah.
No, I just think it's good. If you're gonna hold
I'll
people
change how
accountable
things
coming in,
go.
you should hold them accountable once they're there, too.
Sure, I mean, I think, again, that would be the type of thing that I think the board is gonna lean on the opinion of the board members and the chairs
Yep.
of the committees that are having the problem with a member.
Right.
and I'll look at, I'll look around to see who's got policies like that, and we'll try and fashion it on one that's being used in another community.
Okay.
And then,
I mean, it sounds like, I agree, it doesn't seem like you're
Editing
having
things.
people pounding on the doors for any of these positions, but I'm just thinking of the scenario, you could have a board that's just stagnant. The board meets, the board does something, the board is technically fulfilling its duties, but if they're not actually doing anything,
yeah.
making actual progress, I would wonder what happens.
Well, I mean,
in
so
that.
how that happens is that their position comes up,
Right,
and
we
then
don't
if you
reappoint.
get 2 applicants, then you can vote between 2 applicants.
Right.
But you have the opportunity always to vote, for them to be voted out.
Right, that's the kind of.
There has to be
There has
when
to be
when they run for reappointment, there has to be somebody else
Right,
who.
right,
so-
and a lot of our appointments are one-year appointments.
Yeah,
And so you have that year to
right.
test them out, they get to test us out and see if it's something they want to continue
Yeah.
to do.
So maybe when you think about that reappointment policy, that could be, just putting it as a plug, I mean, if you're gonna evaluate candidates coming in once, I don't feel like you should necessarily be grandfathered in forever.
I
You know
kind
what
of agree with
mean?
that, and I think that's probably something we should talk about, reappointment, that when it's reappointed, you do announce that the position's open, if it's before they just get reappointed. Yeah. Maybe
I
we
don't know, I'm
should-
just
maybe
thinking
I
about
can- maybe I can sleep on that.
transparency,
Maybe I can
fairness,
sleep on that one too.
qualifications.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense, because that should be a notice too to the public, hey, this position's open, even though.
Yeah, I would think that we kind of treat it like an internal hire. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if you have a company or something like that and you have a position that's open and you have somebody that's already on staff and they want to move into that position, they kind of have the right of first refusal of it
Right.
if they want it.
Yeah.
And I would kind of think that we would do something kind of similar to
Right.
that.
At least
They
have
would get
some
to
sort
keep their
of-
appointment, if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're showing up.
I mean,
It
would
usually
only,
becomes a consent agenda, would you say?
Right.
Right.
it would only be a problem if you actually had an overabundance of people
Right.
applying, if you actually had
I
a
think
hot
that'd be a great,
ticket
that'd be a
board
great problem to
position.
have.
But I'm just saying, if we're gonna draft a policy, we should consider all the scenarios, and
Right.
you could potentially have a scenario. So if you're gonna do an appointment policy, I feel like you should have a dismissal policy and a reappointment policy, because then it's comprehensive.
Yep. Yep, no, I think
Thank
you're a
you.
good point.
So, okay, so just to get back to this again, following the expiration of the 30-day notice period, when are we going to close this? So it's
I think
not-
we're asleep on it. I say 60, you say 90, so I think we have to like
Well,
sort of.
okay, so,
I need to
so
put
after
something
this-
in for the next meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to put
Well,
it-
no, we can do this, we can do this.
You think so?
After the-
No, because he's got to redo, he's
You gotta
got to
rewrite
rewrite it.
anyways.
Oh, I have mine already written for you, Joe. So, I was here this morning, Joe, you're laughing at me.
No, I'm laughing with you. You chuckled when you said it, so.
I know, I was here and I said, well, it's just a little sentence. Anyhow, okay, so just so I understand, following the expiration of a 30-day notice period, the TM shall forward the applications for appointment to each member of the Board of Selectmen. And so, no later than how many days after the 30-day notice period?
Sean,
That's-
how many days?
Yeah.
How about 45?
45,
So we'll split the
sounds good to me.
difference.
Let's split it. So,
45.
as I understand it, it would be review following the expiration of the 30-day notice period and no longer than 45 days.
60. Well, again, because people sometimes, good candidates come up, but sometimes they need to think about it. Do they have the time?
Well, it's 60, but we were saying 45 more days, so it'd be,
It would be
70.
70,
No,
75
but there
days.
isn't. There
Don't count
isn't.
your
Look,
days.
look.
What, Duke?
Go by selectmen's meeting.
Yes.
Third selectman meeting after this, or the
Yeah.
fourth selectman meeting. Don't go by 30 days or 45 days.
I think you have to by count. I think it just becomes
Because I
too
think.
hard to track
Okay,
your
so
stuff.
if we're having this much confusion, and maybe it's me, maybe, I don't know.
No, I think we're on the same page. It's just we have to add that line.
Yeah, right, that doesn't say. So here's a 30-day notice period. That means when a position is
Right.
coming open,
Yeah.
how much, so when it finally does come
Right.
open, to the time we appoint, how much time?
45. That would be the
I think 60.
Yeah, 60, yeah. We're
Okay.
good. 60.
Good, come on, let's go.
right.
Let's hear it. 60, going once,
Yeah,
going
put it in
twice.
there.
No longer-
Okay, should we have
And
a?
no longer
and
than.
no longer
We don't
than
want to
60
say
days.
60 days.
Okay, that's
And no longer than
No
60
longer
days.
than 60,
No, it's 2 months. It's fine.
Yeah.
right? Because we don't want to say 60 days, because then it's 90 days.
I'll
We
compare
want to
notes
do
with
no
you.
longer than
60 days, right, yes.
Right,
No
and no
than
longer
Not to
than
exceed.
60 days after the 30-day notification.
No,
No.
not to,
Yes, after the notification, that's correct,
yes,
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 yes. You're right,
exactly.
yes,
60 days after notification.
correct,
Okay,
yes.
perfect, okay, good.
Yes, we're good.
We are
Okay.
good over here.
I
All
will,
right. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll look at your notes and
I know, we're on the same page.
do this, and then
2
we're
months,
gonna
which is
post
right.
it to the town website too, so
Almost.
people
Yeah,
will
2
know.
months total.
2 months after the application's closed?
Yep. No, no.
Yes, 60 days.
Total.
Total.
I love it. So it's really 30 before.
Oh,
there's
gosh.
the end of
No,
the
no,
day.
no, 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 we're just.
We're good.
All
Okay.
right,
I think we need to move on.
All right,
yes.
let's move on to Joe.
Joe,
Wait, can we talk about the policy a little longer?
all right.
Heroes on this review, Joe. No, just kidding.
Well, we, this might have to be a first reading too, because Joe got this at 7 o'clock, essentially.
Oh,
So he hasn't had a chance to take a look
Sorry,
at.
mine was in
What?
here Thursday.
Yeah, mine was
Or
late.
Wednesday.
I was late. I
Um,
apologize.
No, that's okay. So, no,
Everybody got it in now?
everybody got it in and had some really thoughtful things to say. I think everything was fairly consistent.
I had some 5s.
Yeah, you had some size, yeah. And I'll get Joe a copy of everybody's independent forms, so Joe will have that as well. But this, what I did is I just kind of consolidated as best I could between the 5s and the 2s, you know, trying to get the right balance, which I feel like I did pretty well. And then I added in the comments that people made to the right of the scoring of the rating scale.
Well, being a college instructor in my
Yeah.
former life, you always have some things that need improvement.
Yes,
my
that's
only
true.
comment.
Right.
And because this
Yes.
is his first year, you want
Right.
him to be able to focus on what needs.
Right, we don't want him to coast.
Jeff,
That
is
was
there?
just my comment.
That's right. Jeff, is there some type of a summary here, or are we looking at each individual thing? Like, is there an overall, he got a 4 or 3 or whatever, and
Oh,
some
like
type
a
of
total
wrap-up?
it up? No, I didn't do
Yeah, in the
that.
past, we've done some kind of a summary,
Okay.
which would be.
I think he did, I think he sort of did it internally. He
Yeah,
said I had some 5s, I had some 2s, I'm gonna make a 3.5 and color in the 3 and the 4, is basically what he did, right?
Right.
Yeah,
We
but
didn't actually do the math,
yeah, like
right?
we've done like in the
The math,
past, we've
yeah.
had, you know, so I'm looking at the numbers here, and at the end, it would be overall 4.2, and then a summary of, you know, he's
Right.
done X, Y, Z right, this could need improvement, here are some suggestions, that kind of a thing. We usually come up with some kind of a suggestion type of thing, either
Yeah.
on whether it's a needs improvement or even just general suggestions for improving on things, so I don't know if we want to include that in anything.
Well, that would be helpful for
Yeah.
Joe.
Yeah.
Right, because I'm
You know,
thinking this
what
this
areas-
review, I mean, it's for us, but it's really for
That's
Joe.
what I'd wanna know.
It's really so he knows that he's meeting expectations and that he's doing, you know, dotting his Ts and crossing his Is kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple I left blank because it was sort of, I agree with it, they were sort of needs improvement, 'cause I didn't really hadn't seen you do it, so I didn't really say needs improvement, I just
Right.
left it blank, but it
Exactly.
doesn't really show up on here, so.
Right.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I was pretty bold.
Overall rating, so total score.
Yeah. Do you know, I think Darcy and I are new selectmen, so we're just,
Well, I've never done one of these before,
Oh,
so.
you didn't?
No, it's my first time doing this,
oh, okay.
because we really didn't have one.
Yes, he had
Okay.
the turnover occurred last year.
So, you know, this is my first time too,
Oh,
so.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Because Michael Lombardo was here.
Yeah, Michael was
This
the
is
last
my-
one, which had been 3 years ago or something like
No,
that.
this is my third, so,
Okay.
If I did 2 with Michael Lombardo and then this one.
yeah.
But I think it's really helpful for us
We
to
did one every
be able
6
to
months for
look at
Michael,
things
so
that are
it's a handful.
important
Yeah.
to the town, and, so,
Okay.
Is there anything you want to point out as we're reading this, anything that was either very consistent or very inconsistent among the 4 or 5 of us, or?
I think great listener has established an open door policy for
Yeah, that
townspeople.
was-
Yeah, I think we all said that.
employees. I mean, really, really commendable. I think when patients, I'm sorry, when citizens call me and they're irate or something, they'll say, well, I also called that Joe D guy, and they always tell me, and he called me right back, and that means a lot to citizens. So I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. No, I think the open door policy was pretty consistent. I think the fact that Joe is very knowledgeable, yet at the same time, if there was a question he wasn't able to answer, is quick to get the answer from the appropriate professional, depending on what the issue is. That was pretty consistent across the board. Pretty consistent with the new hires have been received very well and have been good good fits with town hall. That was pretty consistent. The use of social media to get information out to people was consistent. The packets that we have for the meetings, I think most people commented on that as well.
And you do a little bit better job getting them out publicly as well.
Yeah, I think that was, yeah.
But,
Yeah, that
but
was a
certainly trying to
comment.
get you the information you need before the meeting has been a priority. So we'll try to work on making it a little more publicly accessible going forward.
The whole packets, you
Yeah.
mean, yeah. You put your reports on the town website, do you? Yeah, good.
So with just a comment on the packet, so talking about trying to get them up online so people at home can follow along, would that be Michelle, or would that be someone else that would help with that? Or I'm thinking kind of we're trying to do something with Dora's position, would that be
Well,
folded into that possibly
Right now,
or
it'd be
something?
primarily Michelle that
Right.
would be helping me with it. She helps me make sure we have all the items that, when we look at the agenda on the Monday or Tuesday after you guys meet, we start to go through, okay, what do we need for this item, what do we need for that item, and we spend the next couple of days running around making sure we have it all, and then making enough copies and getting it out to you all in time. Generally, it takes us from Tuesday morning to Thursday to make sure we have everything and get it to you. I think it's appropriate that we share with the Board of Selectmen the materials before we make them public.
Right.
So, and then occasionally you'll have things like the policy we just discussed, or trying to get the presentation from Amoresco. It took longer than we expected, so I wasn't able to get them into the packets, therefore I wouldn't have been able to share them publicly.
Right, and just kind of another side, since we're talking about packets and stuff, like I'm looking at this new policy here. Since this is just a draft, we should make sure that we have
Draft on it.
draft on it in case we do start posting stuff online, that it clearly says draft on
Good
it,
idea.
so that people aren't thinking that
Right.
this is the final policy.
Right.
You know, you could even first reading draft something on it, a watermark of some type would be helpful for people, because a lot of people like,
Yep.
they'll refer back to something and say, well, this should be it, and, I just wanna make sure that it says draft. And just like to say for the people at home that can't see this right now, the rating scale that we had was a 1 through 5, 1 being the lowest is unacceptable, 2 needs improvement, 3 quality performance, 4 commendable, and 5 outstanding. And overall, through the, 20, 30 or so categories that we looked at with Joe, consistently a 4 on all of them.
Yep.
So commendable to be commendable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think the threes are just mainly because, well, for me, I've just not had an opportunity to work with you on various issues, but,
Yeah, same with me.
yeah.
So, you want to make some changes to the document and stuff before it becomes final? I'm not at the next meeting. Do you want this to be on the agenda for the November 4th meeting?
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
And that will give you time to make any changes and stuff.
Okay,
Make it public.
excellent. Good job, Joe.
Thank you.
Really.
Yes.
That means, yeah, this is your first go at a full-time manager position, and you've been very successful.
Yeah,
at
no,
it,
you've
so-
definitely stepped up to the
Yes.
plate.
Stepped up,
I think
so.
the
Super.
John Q. Public has really felt that you are approachable and reasonable. You don't take sides on any issue. You tend to be a listener, which I think is from your reporting days.
That's one
And I
thing you
think
said
it's
during your,
served you well.
that's one thing you said during your interview was that you listened first, and I think that you've been able to emulate what you said you would, so that's been good.
I do my best. As my grandmother said, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so. Gotta use
point.
Use them in that proportion.
Excellent. All right, I will do that and get it out to everybody for a look. And Joe, any feedback, when you do have time to go through
Yeah.
this, any feedback you have?
I mean, if you want from me feedback, I'll try to go through. As you said, you scored me pretty well. I appreciate that. There's not a lot, I'm not gonna go through.
You do a
I
self-
really think I should have had a
Yeah, I
5
was
there.
gonna say, and
Do you do a self-review?
to Jeff's point, and I'll add something as far as like the self-review thing.
Yeah.
What we typically would do before, when we did a review for the previous town manager, we would individually give him or send him our copy of it. He would get the compilation. He would then sign the compilation and say, I accept, or I've read it, I understand it, and then he would give some type of a comment back to the board on, I see that I need improvement here, I will work harder on this, or, any kind of thing that you wanted to add to it, I think would be appropriate.
Okay.
Or, I mean, I've done in the past where they take the same form and Joe fills it out for himself.
For himself, right.
So, self-review. It's a good sort of reflection, but maybe next time we'll do that. Can't do it now because you've seen the answers before you take the test.
We gave you answers to the test beforehand.
I'm just gonna go down and write 4s everywhere now. because-
Yeah, just
Thank you.
Excellent.
I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the feedback. I know that for part of the public record, the compiled evaluation will be what, it goes into the public record. Any of you that wants to share your individuals with me so that I can look at those things as areas of improvement, I'm happy to do that. We look forward to it, so.
Thank you, Joe.
May I make a motion?
Yes, you may.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay.
Real quick, before we take that vote, I've mentioned it a couple times, so everybody knows I won't be here on the 21st. I will be at the International City Manager Association Conference in Nashville, Tennessee. But we do have a pretty good evolving agenda, things that have been pushed off. So I know we normally meet the Monday prior to the next meeting. That's next week, but it's a holiday. I've already got a number of things, so if you want to identify who will be discussing the agenda with you, I can give you both a copy of this, and you can get back to me with your comments. It might make it easier to complete the agenda, start work on the packets.
Are we going to do the Affordable Housing Trust position?
It's up to you. You haven't made a vote on it yet, but it's on here.
Yeah, I think we're ready. I think the next meeting we'll be ready to act on that. My opinion, I'm ready.
Well, do
Yeah.
you have to? Are you going to rewrite a
I'm gonna make changes.
But
that
that,
doesn't-
that doesn't affect
It
that.
doesn't affect, okay.
No, I'm
yeah,
gonna make
that's-
changes to the policy based on the comments that I took notes on and that
Yeah.
Rosie will give me after the meeting. And I'll circulate the draft again. That will be one of the first things on your agenda at the next meeting, is to review, do the second reading and vote on it. But you don't have to make that, you know.
Right,
then
we can
you've-
choose not to vote on
Yeah.
it, or you can send changes to
Right.
Joe if
And
you see
then,
something else.
And
we can
then
discuss
there
at the
are,
next meeting.
there are currently 3 appointments for the Hamilton Board of Health, the Hamilton Foundation, the Hamilton Affordable Housing Trust that are there if the board so chooses to leave those on the agenda. So,
For next time.
Okay. Okay. And then who's up to join me for the agenda planning meeting? Anybody want to join
I'll
us on
join.
Tuesday?
If nobody else,
I don't,
I'm not going to be around because of the holiday, taking a long weekend, so.
well,
I
so
won't be.
one of the things we were just saying is that because normally we do them on the Monday in
Right.
between, and next Monday is a holiday.
Yep,
and
I
since
just
I'm not
need
gonna
to
be here
look at-
afterwards, I would just give this to 2
Tuesday.
people and let you take a look, and then you can make recommendations and changes based on that. I'm
we
trying to do
wouldn't get to
more to
meet
get your
with you,
help.
Joe?
Go ahead, Darce.
You can if you want. It's up
All
to
right,
you.
so Darcy, if you want to do it
I'll
Tuesday,
look at my schedule.
9:30?
yes.
9:30?
Can you give me
Tuesday.
the date?
Tuesday at 9:30. Tuesday
the
the
15th.
15th at 9:30.
Day before my birthday.
I feel like there's something
That's
on that.
Yeah.
Here, this
I'll
this
have
is a
to
primer
take the
for you.
next time, Darcy.
Primer for you. Let me take a look at it. Tuesday at 9:30, okay.
I think I'm going to second Darcy's motion. No one seconded it before.
All right. Any further discussion on that?
No,
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
So
meeting.
this is
Sorry, so Joe, where'd you say
Thank you,
the
Mary
con-
Alice.
Joe, where'd you say the conference was?
Nashville.
Nash?
Oh, cool.
Wow, you'll have
Good
fun
city.
there, won't you?
Yeah, I've never been there before. I'm
Lucky.
looking forward to it, so.